I'm Dwayne Lester, and this is The Paradigm Shift. Every day a new poll is taken and printed in the papers and online, broadcast on television and radio, and dissected by the talking heads and politicians to see what it means and what should be done, if anything. For example, a MoveOn.org poll says that 85% of Missourians support mandatory background checks for every gun purchase in the state. Does that mean politicians should drop what they're doing and run to turn this poll into law, mandating that when you sell your gun, or even if it's to your brother or sister, the government needs to look into their life? Another poll says that 77% of Missourians support a state plan to reduce carbon pollution in Missouri. Should lawmakers begin implementing regulations and passing laws to force Missouri's power plants to cut the amount of carbon dioxide they release, even if it would cause electricity rates to necessarily skyrocket? We do, after all, live in a democracy, right? Well, here's the paradigm shift. The United States of America is not a democracy. It's a constitutional republic, which means we are not subject to the tyranny of the majority, but to the limited powers given to government by the consent of the governed via a state and federal constitution. When you look at the mobs of leftists marching in the streets, clenched fists raised in the air, invariably you'll hear the war cry of the smelly, unwashed masses that this is what democracy looks like. Well, yeah, we know. It's mob rule, which is why the Founding Fathers put limits on the government by setting up a constitution that respects natural rights. Our Constitution is a democracy killer. It stops the majority from violating the rights of the minority just because something is popular or the people really, really want it. The Constitution lays out the framework. It, like Jean-Luc Picard, says the line must be drawn here, this far, no farther. The limits a constitution places on government keeps an elected official from looking at a poll and saying, well, I know this is going to violate people's property rights, but look at how many people want it. I'm not only going to vote for it, heck, I'm going to sponsor the bill. And the duly elected members of government, at least here in Missouri, take an oath of office to support the Constitution of the United States. Oh, but the Constitution has changed, they say. It's a living document. It doesn't mean what it once meant. Well, that's a bunch of bull. Natural rights are the foundation of the Constitution. Have they changed? Do we suddenly not have a right to personal property? Are we to lose our right to self-defense because a bunch of knuckle-headed moral busybodies took time to answer a poll question? What if the majority of Americans suddenly supported slavery? What if it was just in a specific Senate district? Does that mean it's right, moral, or just? Should a senator write legislation because it's accepted by his constituents? Hardly. Natural rights are endowed by our Creator and are unchanging. But the General Welfare Clause, they say. The General Welfare Clause is the most molested phrase in the entire Constitution. Founding Fathers James Madison and Thomas Jefferson both weighed in on this phrase, noting it didn't mean Congress could spend money on whatever it defined as the general welfare. Jefferson himself said they are not to do anything they please to provide for the general welfare, but only to lay taxes for that purpose. To consider the latter phrase not as describing the purpose of the first, but as giving a distinct and independent power to do any act they please, which might be for the good of the Union, would render all the preceding and subsequent enumerations of power completely useless. It would reduce the whole instrument to a single phrase, that of instituting a Congress with power to do whatever would be for the good of the United States. And, as they would be the sole judges of the good or evil, it would also be a power to do whatever evil they please. Years and years of leftist re-education and judicial activism has resulted in Jefferson's warning becoming a reality. Supreme Court rulings during FDR's day did most of the damage, but just because the Supreme Court says something doesn't mean it's constitutional, moral, or just. This is the same group that gave us Dred Scott, which said that slaves were not protected by the Constitution and could never be citizens. Our history is rich with examples that were popular but completely immoral. Slavery, Prohibition, and the Clinton presidency are just a few examples. But despite what the Supreme Court rules or what the polls say, the proper role of government isn't to look at what's popular and make it law. It's to protect the natural rights of the governed. You have a right to life, but you don't have a right to my life. You have a right to liberty, but not my liberty. And you have a right to property, but you do not have a right to my property. The Constitution makes this clear. If you took an oath to support that Constitution, you weigh the desires found in polls against it. you consider the natural rights it is founded on and the original intent of the document. It means that sometimes you go against the tyranny of the majority in defense of the minority. It means sometimes you take a stand for what's right instead of what's popular. It means sometimes telling your constituents you can't do something because it isn't allowed, isn't just, or isn't moral. Otherwise, what good are you? You're just a non-thinking puppet of the pollster, a figurehead for mob rule, and as Jefferson said, we would be subject to whatever evil the majority found acceptable. That's the paradigm shift. I'm Dwayne Lester. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of them in the future, please consider making a donation to the Missouri Torch here. And please subscribe to our new YouTube channel and visit us at themissouritorch.com.